All righty, let's move on to the Outlaws now. So, Albury Outlaws. I've just realised I haven't been saying the names of the players of the team, so let's start now, hey? Albury Outlaws, we've got Campstar, Dark Passion, Molten, Dusty 51, Griffo, and Whippet. Sync listed at 12th. They finished in 12th after Cascade 2 and then just dropped one spot on the finals day to 13th. They got a win and 3/3. And some of the teams they got during the comp is they beat One Up twice. They beat Apex, Storm, Vikings, and Dragons every time they played them. So these guys took some scalps and finished midway up the ladder. CB, did you get to play these guys much throughout the tournament?
Definitely played these guys. They were a hard team to verse both strategically as well as pack on pack. I feel that they should have performed on the ladder at the end when all's said and done a lot better than they did. Unlucky last day. I was thinking that this team should potentially be a top 10 team when I initially versed them. You look at their roster, and from what I saw, Dark Passion would be rotating his attackers through Camster, Molten, down to Dusty and so forth. But the way I noticed that he did it was very strategic to exploit and break open a defense, whether it be attacking from the sniper role and then the secondary attacker would be going around to the back door, or sometimes if he saw that the forest was posing a lot of problem, he'd just go and take that out, call comms to the back door, the player would go through, back themselves and take the base. When you attack their defense, you were consistently punished for it. Notice that Whippet played a lot in the forest, a little bit of an anchor role, very good tag ratio. Griffo, Dusty were left, right, whatever combination they were, but always packing well. You were trying to get blood out of a stone, trying to get pack off these guys. They played very well strategically. Most of the time I noticed that it was a two-man attack of some description, and they had absolute confidence in their three-man defensive setup that would hold the line. And I noticed very specifically that they like to keep Forest as well as some sort of sniper role mutually supporting each other, with the third defender often cruising around from, I believe, airport or whatever combination of base it was, through to the back door and sweeping through in that fashion as well. A combination of Whippet and Griffo and Dusty in that held out quite a lot of high tier players, and that allowed for Dark Passion to push Campster and Molten through bases. One thing I noticed this year though was Campster had a huge leap in skill. Just consistently better from the years I saw before. Most of the time I'd verse him, he was beating me most of the time, and it was just out of skill. I was like, well done, mate. This guy has obviously improved very well. And you know, I believe scoring 32nd on solos was well earned, actually. So he's one to watch in the future. So yeah, that's just a quick summary anyhow.
Yeah, I found it interesting that their thirds that they got on the final day were actually significant. I mean, some of them weren't far from second, but they were all considerable from first. Did any of you guys notice how they were switching from their standard, the three-person defense that they obviously trusted very well, into a more offensive structure when they got behind? Did you guys notice if they were doing that well, or if they were calling it too late? Or yeah, I'm curious to know if you had any insight into why they might have not have been so far off first in those 3/3 that they got on the final day.
Or you, CB?
I'm not sure entirely when they'd switch to that three-man attacker, but I do believe that they would have kept their anchor, someone in Whippet's role, and plus sniper to cover Whippet so that she could keep the front door down, and a little bit of the back door from sniper, and as in a combination together. But it'd only be for a quick smash. I believe when they scored low in some of those games, it was when Dark Passion couldn't rotate players through bases and got bogged down. And obviously, when you have to switch to a 3-man after that's already occurred, you're behind. I just believe it didn't work out on the final day for them. I believe they deserved a higher rank than what they got there, because just pack on pack versus these guys, it's always tough. So I believe that something broke down with getting those initial bases, and once you're behind and the game's broken open, it's hard to catch up.
Yeah, and that can happen in a game, can't it? Sometimes it just doesn't work in attack, and sometimes you get over the line because your defense might have a ridiculously good game, but quite often if the attack breaks down, it's not looking good for you. Yeah, okay. So, Ryan, have you got anything to add about the Outlaws, or did you see anything during the tournament you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, we've versed them a few times. We've versed them also at like a lot of a variation of them at Prenats 2 and Prenats 3. Like CV was saying, they very much back their defense and their field pointing game. Quite interestingly, I remember a few games during the comp where they would be down 2 or even 3 bases, and it wouldn't seem like they swapped to go aggressive. They backed their like defense and their pack points that heavily, but they were coming out and winning games like 2 or 3 bases down just off the back of their field points, which is pretty impressive. It's all well and good to make strategic decisions based on like the bases that have gone down in the game, but it's really hard to read how well your pack points are relative to the other teams. So yeah, massive kudos to them. But yeah, maybe what we saw on that last day was like they'd I can't be 100%, but my impression would be that they very much backed that style of play of heavier defense, 3D, 4D sometimes, and then like a sniper, but like always getting field points, obviously, because they were winning games 2 or 3 bases down. But I think quite a bit of the game would go on, and like the bases would, like the other teams had, would be quite a bit higher than what they had. So maybe they would take a little bit too long to adjust to going more aggressive. And then also I seem to remember in a couple of the games we versed them, it wasn't like okay, there's just like Dark Passion roaming around, okay, now there's like the second attacker, okay, now there's like a 3-man attack. It was always like all or nothing in a way. Like I remember quite a few games where they would dump towards the end of the game, but not necessarily with enough time to really catch up. Like even if they got all of the bases really quickly, the other teams were so far ahead on bases that it didn't really matter. So yeah, maybe it was one of those things where it did them well earlier in the comp, where they would be able to, even though the other teams are 2 or 3 bases ahead during the game, they just keep playing the same game state and just back in their field points. But then towards the end of the comp, I guess the other teams got better at field pointing themselves. Maybe they're exchanging more heavily on each other, and leaving the Outlaws alone. And because they hadn't played outside of that playstyle until the last day, maybe that's why we saw a bit of a drop from them.
Yeah, that can happen too. If you get, it's one of the, I guess, pitfalls of being too good defensively is that you can get left alone once you've got a reputation that, the base is going to be impenetrable. Essentially, you just have attackers at your base for less time, which means less field points. So, yeah, that ability to, we used to call it keeping your base juicy. You might have heard Beefy use that one.
He says at least
Ryan?
once every training, yes.
Good. Keep your base juicy, which means that make it lucrative enough that the attackers want to hang around a little bit, and then you can pick up more field points and sometimes even get a few denials. So it is a thing, keeping your base a little bit juicy. So it's hard to know what's going to happen with this team because Dark Passion and Griffo are back in Queensland. I'm not really aware of if the team had agreed to stay together once the move happens or anything like that. But yeah, just for the purposes of the conversation, where do you think a team like this would go to from here, CV?
Well, obviously, I was just super impressed by them, and I believe they're unlucky in the position that they got. To progress, I'd love to see a lead attacker on this team. Develop Camster, throw him out there more. So there's less pressure on Dark Passion having to stick himself in the unfortunate position of pushing attackers through, which I know he does. He takes the worst spot in order to get people through the bases. He's a very smart and strategic player, and often I see the guy who's taken one or two defenders on by himself just so he can get that person through. He does a good job at it. So having that lead strong attacker, and probably developing a strategy that they can fall back on if teams leave them alone. But otherwise, super impressed on their pack. It was really solid. I believe they've got some really good players in development there. An honourable mention to Whippet as well. She's coming up in the ranks as well. Good performance in women's and I believe juniors as well, wasn't it?
Triples. Did she get a trophy in triples?
I think they got second in triples.
Second in triples, yeah.
Nah, fantastic year there. No, she's done really well. So I'd like to see how she goes in the next couple of years, where she finishes there. But otherwise, yeah, that's basically what. Yeah, just another really strong attacker to be able to support Dark Passion, and yeah, otherwise super impressed by their defense as well. I was quite happy on it. Like, you know, I'm not being on the receiving end of it obviously and getting locked out of bases, but yes, some more diversity in their strategies, just so they don't get left out of a game. But I honestly think they deserve better in the rankings than what they got in the end there.
Pretty solid endorsement. Ryan, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think maybe it's a little kind of similar in the vein of like the WA Hellhounds, like an over-reliance in their defense, and then towards the end of the comp when maybe they weren't able to have the same kind of success of locking down the game and making it slower. I'm sure like they're a smart team, Dark Passion, a very smart captain. I'm sure they had some kind of contingency, but I guess it didn't really work out for them on the last day. So the kind of thing I'd be looking at if it was, you know, just off of my brain right now, obviously if you have such a good defense that people want to leave you alone, you can either, like Bootza was saying, of like the idea of like making it a bit juicier, so they believe that there is a chance that I'm going to get in this base, so they stick around, which is, yeah, that's one methodology. The other one would be, this is something that I actually saw the Wolfpack do at Prenats 3, that I don't know if I say Wolfpack, Catalyst. I don't know if they did it at Nats, because I don't remember seeing, we versed them a few times, I don't remember seeing it as much, but they had like a 4-man D with Grub running around, and then Grub would see an opportunity at a base, he would crunch home, and he would say, I don't know if he would say a word, or if he would just like pick 2 players, and they would just do a sudden bam, 3-man attack, get a base, crunch home, before there's even time for you to really deal with it. But they did it in a way where it wasn't like, okay, you know, we're playing the slower game, we're getting field points, the other teams have gotten 1 or 2 bases on each other, maybe it's time we should probably start doing that. They were pretty like proactive with it, and that was their main way of, at Prenats at least, of like staying at the same pace as the other teams in terms of bases and stuff. So maybe less of a I don't want to say one-dimensional, but a little bit more flowy, a little bit more dynamic. That's the one. You know, you don't have the prerequisite for going aggressive doesn't have to be you're losing. It can also be to get a lead, or it can be just to stay at the same pace as the other teams. Once you start losing, it becomes harder and harder and harder to climb back. So trying to stay more at pace. Like, obviously they're all really good at field pointing. They're all insane pack on pack. Like, they all pretty much had a above 1.0 tag ratio, which is really good for like a whole team to have tag ratio above 1. That's really good. But yeah, as we keep saying, you know, it's not enough to be able to be good at one thing, at one side of the coin. You have to be able to do both. So yeah, less like waiting for them to start losing to start going aggressive, but using it as a tool to stay at the same pace as the other teams, or to get like a slight lead and then slowing down.
Yeah. Yeah, some great advice there from the gentleman. I've got nothing to add to that. I thought that was all really on point.